If you missed Jack Anderson Confidential, you missed hard-hitting, thought-provoking stories, like how Egyptian and U.S. officials stole millions from the Egyptian military aid program, asbestos poisoning at Johns Manville, the $6 billion Maverick missile boondoggle, problems in the Justice Department's witness protection program, and this week, an investigation into how improper health screenings of Southeast Asian refugees has spread disease in this country. Don't miss this week's Jack Anderson Confidential. An American family sentenced to non-existence, their only identity, 3 dots. Asbestos, an epidemic of asbestos lung cancer. Was there a corporate cover-up of the hazards?
Have millions of dollars been stolen from the U.S. military assistance program to Egypt?
For sure.
Mossad Badra, a star witness in exposing the U.S.-Egyptian military assistance program scandal, arrested last week, the day after he appeared on this program. A full report. These stories coming up next on Jack Anderson Confidential. Now from Washington, here is Jack Anderson.
First news behind the headlines. Perhaps the most disturbing news this week was the jump in unemployment. But confidential forecasts contain even worse news for many workers who have lost their jobs. They'd better develop new skills and look for other work because they may never get their jobs back. This will be true specifically of auto and steel workers. Let me read a chilling excerpt from one confidential forecast. There is little hope that workers from closed steel and auto plants in the Midwest will ever get their jobs back. There's also an untold story behind the firing of 15 people last summer from the Democratic National Committee. The reason given was lack of funds. But my sources tell me it was a purge of Senator Edward Kennedy's supporters. The committee's now tilted in favor of former Vice President Walter Mondale. The Pentagon lobbied hard to convince Congress to purchase a new cargo plane. Critics claim this was a $10 billion bailout of the manufacturer, the Lockheed Corporation. Now the General Accounting Office has accused the Pentagon of illegal lobbying. This man, Lloyd Mosman, participated in the strategy sessions where the lobbying was planned. In fact, he was the senior Air Force civilian present. Last week, the Pentagon nominated him to receive a $10,000 bonus. It's a reward, I'm quoting, for outstanding performance. When I return, a look at an American family sentenced to banishment by the Justice Department.
If in all the world you could have only one source of news and information, what would you want it to be? Think about that for a second. Only one source of news and information. What would it be? If you say Time magazine, you're not alone. More than 29 million people all over the world turn to Time's lively pages each week to catch up on what's new and what's news everywhere in every field. With writing so fresh and pictures so colorful, you enjoy every minute and start looking forward to the next issue. When? Time is back again with the latest books and movies. What's happening with sports, business, and people, and what may happen next. In all, Time gives you 30 exciting departments of news and ideas. And now, Time makes one of its biggest offers ever. 26 weeks of Time for less than 79 cents an issue. Over 45% off Time's cover price. Payable in 3 easy installments of $6.77. So call, toll free, 1-800-621-3024. Oh, by the way, with your paid subscription, we'll also send you Time's Desk Reference Library, the Webster Dictionary, Roget's Thesaurus, and the Signet Hammond World Atlas, free. Call 1-800-621-3024. Get Time's Desk Reference Library free, and Time for 3 easy installments of $6.77. Our operators are standing by. Remember, Time is over 45% off, and the reference library, all 3 books, is free.
This is a story about an American family. It's a family without a name, without a past, and now without a future. They've been cast out of the place they called home, cut off from the people they once knew. They can never return. They don't dare telephone a loved one or even send for their hometown newspaper. They have no identification papers. Their fingerprints can't even be traced. They have no Social Security number. It's impossible now to find a job without a Social Security number or references. Well, I wish I could show you the parents' haunted faces, but I can show you only the baby whose face won't be recognized. All are identified by a code name, 3 dots.
It's, we just don't exist. As far as the government goes, if you were to call the Marshal Service or the Justice Department, you'd get an answer like, we're precluded from answering that question. Or we neither deny nor confirm that 3 dots is in the witness protection program. So who's to say if they find my body laying in a ditch, or my wife and myself, who's to say we ever existed?
Why is the family in hiding? Well, the Mafia wants to kill them. Mr. 3 Dots helped the government convict nearly 20 mafioso of such crimes as racketeering, extortion, and murder. Now Mr. 3 Dots has been marked for murder himself. My associate, Indy Badmore, found the family in abject poverty. They have no money, not even enough to buy the baby's formula. Mr. 3 Dots went to Catholic Charities for food and shelter. Here's the room where they now live. But most charities are also short of money. Catholic Charities cannot afford to maintain the 3 Dots family any longer.
We just tried to provide some type of service until we could fully understand really what was going on, so that we could sort of guide him or refer him to the places that he would need to go to either get the assistance that he need, or to get the problem squared away so that he can either carry on with his life or get back in the mainstream of society.
At one point, we didn't have any place to stay. We didn't have any money in our pockets. We were told, I was told, that if I wanted a place to stay, I should go to the shelter for battered wives and make up a lie about how my husband beat me. And when I asked where my husband would go, they told me that he could go to the YMCA. I explained to them that we wanted to stay together. And I was told, well, there's nothing we can do for you. Where are you going to go? What are you going to do? And at that point, I just about broke. I don't know what I would have done at that point if help hadn't come along. We probably would have hitched back to our danger area.
The danger area Mrs. 3 Dots is referring to is the outside world. It could be almost anywhere. Doesn't the government protect witnesses who testify against organized crime? Yes. In recognition of Mr. 3 Dots' valuable aid, the Justice Department put his family in the Witness Protection Program.
We were all settled. My husband had started a new life, a business. We had a house. Everything was going fine. Everything looked good for the future. And then one day, we got a telephone call. We were terminated from the program.
Bob Kelly is a retired federal marshal with more than 20 years' experience. The Marshal Service runs the Witness Protection Program. Kelly now heads his own firm, which provides executive protection to VIPs.
What do the marshals actually do for the witnesses that they're protecting?
Well, for the most part, they give them a new future, new identity, relocate them in another area, provide total security for the principal and his family.
What would happen if the Marshal Service were to withdraw this protection from an individual? Would it place this witness in any kind of danger?
I'd rather think it would. I'd rather think it would, because he would be on his own. It would be up to him. And he might have enough background to where he would make proper judgment at different times, and maybe not. And it might make the difference between life or death.
You know, it's just a matter of time till I die. It's just the waiting. It's the hard part. You know, sometimes a guy is going to get killed. He's going to get the electric chair. He's going to be hung or gassed. He knows his date. Me, I don't know it. I don't know what tomorrow brings. We've talked about giving up to children. You know, it's now that's even a thought that occurred to us, and that's for their sake more so.
The Justice Department arbitrarily dropped Mr. Three Dots from the Witness Protection Program. What was his offense? He was a pain in the neck. This was his reward for being a good citizen. It's understandable he became edgy. The Justice Department relocated the family in an area where he was unknown, but the government used a trucker who might know his identity. Mr. Three Dots became irritable. Then he wanted to set up his own business. He argued with the Justice Department over money. He wasn't paid to testify. This was resettlement money. Mr. Three Dots became cantankerous. In a fury, he contacted a local newspaper and blew his top. The article embarrassed the Justice Department, and government officials don't like to be embarrassed. They washed their hands of Mr. Three Dots. The government has pulled the plug on his life support system. Isn't that a high penalty for the government to impose because of a tantrum?
That withdrawal of them leaves me totally, I have no defense. What do I have to do? Carry a gun and separate from my wife so she might live, and get away from my children, because you can't explain in words. Just think to yourself, if you were put on a gallows and you had a chance for a reprieve. See, everybody in the outside world can go to court and they can get a reprieve. What about me? I sit here and I know I'm dead at any time. I walk outside. I don't know if I made a mistake and they know where I'm at, or I don't know if even the people using the cameras, who they know, who you speak to, or who they speak to. I live in a world of total non-trust.
Hello?
Yeah?
Hi, how you doing?
How you doing, Maggie?
Okay.
This is the voice of Margaret Hutchinson, the Justice Department's top liaison with the Marshal Service. The people in the Justice Department, the Marshal Service, and the Witness Protection Program refused to be interviewed. So we recorded this conversation between Mr. Three Dots and Margaret Hutchinson.
So you say there's no place I can have a hearing that you know of?
Well, you've had it as far as I can tell.
How?
Here in this office. I mean, you talked to Jerry Sure person?
Yeah, but I didn't see him.
Well, that doesn't matter. I mean, you can tell him the same thing over the phone. You can tell him face to face.
Oh, no, you can't. No, you can't. Because people see a person's face. They know who's telling the truth, who isn't. When the Marshal Service told you that they were right, you believed them. I'm telling you I'm right. Nobody wants to believe me.
Senator Orrin Hatch is chairman of the Senate Labor and Human Resources Committee, which has been investigating organized crime. I took the Three Dots case to Hatch.
Where does somebody like Three Dots turn to for help?
He can probably come to us. He can probably come to the United States Senate, to the Judiciary Committee, which is now controlled by people who would be sympathetic.
What specifically can you do, or will you do?
Well, I think we can hold hearings. I think we can put pressure on the FBI. I think we can put pressure on the Justice Department. I think we can do a lot of things. We can certainly demand that we know, demand to know just why they took him off that program, and they better have a doggone good reason why they did it.
Senator Hatch is offering hope to Mr. Three Dots and his abandoned family. But the problem is, it may not come in time.
You can't imagine how close death is when you have cancer. Doctor says to you, you have cancer. You know you're going to die. Well, I got a cancer that's incurable, and I have no doctor. I have no fail-safe system. I can't take any narcotics for the pain. I mean, where do I go? Where do I turn? I don't think anybody out there can answer that.
This is a classic case of the arrogance of power. Willful officials have washed their hands of a human life because their authority was challenged. The man in charge of the Justice Department is Attorney General William French Smith. Well, I'm putting him on notice now. If any member of the Three Dots family is murdered, he'll have blood on his hands. When I return, we'll meet victims of asbestos lung disease. Was there a corporate cover-up?
Denture wearers speak out about denture adhesives.
Hate them all.
I love mine.
What? Pastes are gooey and powders are gritty.
Not my adhesive. I use Liquid Dentrol, the first liquid denture adhesive.
A liquid?
You bet. Dentrol is smooth without all that goo and grit, and it flows on in a thin stream that holds so comfortably you almost forget you're wearing dentures. Now what do you have to say?
I'm in love with Liquid Dentrol denture adhesive.
For a comfortable hold.
This is asbestos ore, perhaps the most controversial material in America. For years, it's been made into building insulation. Neighborhoods literally became white with asbestos dust as it was sprayed or applied into just about every form of building construction. It was the single best protection against fires. 10 million Americans worked in the asbestos industry. Additional millions were exposed to asbestos dust. Then it was discovered that the dust was lethal. Now there's new evidence that it causes cancer. Meanwhile, the Johns Manville Company has been hit with so many lawsuits over asbestos that it's filed for bankruptcy. I assigned my associate, Jack Mitchell, to investigate the story behind the bankruptcy. He uncovered evidence that the industry knew asbestos caused cancer and hid this knowledge from its workers for years. Mitchell spoke to one of the workers, Maurice Mealy, in Lowell, Massachusetts.
Do you now believe that the Manville officials knew that there was a health hazard which they weren't telling you and your fellow workers about at the time?
Well, if they knew about it, they really kept it quiet, because nobody would talk about that. Nobody.
Maurice Mealy is 62 years old. In the late 1940s, he worked for the Johns Manville Company. 30 years later, he developed a disease called asbestosis. It was an irreversible lung disease caused by asbestos fibers clogging the lungs and choking a person to death, slowly. Dr. Arthur Langer is Associate Director of the Environmental Sciences Laboratory at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City. He is one of the nation's leading authorities on the medical effects of asbestos exposure.
What we see for this particular individual was that his lung tissues contained an enormous number of asbestos fibers. All of these linear objects that you see are objects that are asbestos fibers.
Maurice Maley's lungs look like the X-ray that Dr. Langer just showed us. 16,500 people have sued Johns Manville. They contend they were exposed to asbestos, either in their work or through being exposed to Johns Manville products. This allegedly caused some of them to contract fatal lung diseases or asbestos-related cancers. Internal industry documents, which have been made available to me, show that as far back as 50 years ago, the industry knew about the dangers of asbestos exposure. Yet manufacturers callously decided to keep this knowledge from the workers. Industry documents suggested that they attempted to censor this information and to keep it out of scientific journals. Earl Parker is a senior vice president of Johns Manville.
The changes from what was submitted to what was published were very minuscule. And in fact, the Johns Manville executive responsible for authorizing the study told the author that under no circumstances would he ask him to change the material, but simply not to make it appear any less favorable to the company than the data would justify. So I really don't think there was any evidence of any editing or control of that information at all. The studies were done. They were done with industry sponsorship, and they were published, and they began the process of controlling dust exposure in our own plants and throughout the industry.
Additional evidence of this cover-up was filed in closed proceedings in a New York courtroom last week. Charles Romer was an attorney for a leading asbestos manufacturer. He filed this affidavit. I'm quoting from the affidavit. It was Manville's policy not to do anything nor to tell the employees of the X-ray findings. Manville has recently filed for bankruptcy. The company pleaded that it could not afford to fight the thousands of lawsuits. Meanwhile, Maurice Maley and many others have been blocked from filing suits because of the bankruptcy move. Earl Parker at Johns Manville.
The net worth of the company, that is the total assets minus the liabilities on the books at the time that we filed on August 26, was about $1.1 billion. We have 16,500 claims pending against us, and we have projected another 30,000 claims between now and the year 2002. So with our average disposition cost of $40,000 per claim, that came down to a number that we would have to book after taking into account the insurance that's available to us of about $700 or $800 million. So you see that really virtually wipes out our net worth.
The asbestos epidemic is an American tragedy, and therefore a story that should be told.
Let's say asbestos was to be banned tomorrow. What about the material that's in place? For the last 20 years, we've been using 500,000 tons of asbestos every year. It's gone up slightly. But on the average, 500,000 tons of fiber has been used in the United States in all varieties of products. We've got 10 million tons of the material in place already. Those in the construction industries, those in the demolition industries, those in the maintenance and repair industries are going to be exposed for the next century. It's a problem that's going to be here for a long time to come.
When I return, I'll tell you about a witness who appeared on my show last week. Today, he's in prison. Last week, I disclosed before these cameras a major scandal. I reported that millions of dollars have been stolen from U.S. military aid to Egypt. Top Egyptian political figures and former CIA and Pentagon officials allegedly are implicated. The day after the program was aired, Egyptian security forces arrested the one Egyptian witness who had agreed to appear on camera. Here's what he had told my associate Dale Van Atta in Cairo.
Have millions of dollars been stolen from the U.S. military assistance program to Egypt?
For sure.
Who stole it?
The Minister of Defense.
Named?
General Kamal Hassan Ali.
And what is he now?
He is the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
That was Mossad Abu El-Kir Badra as he appeared on this show last week. He's a man of extraordinary courage. He had been warned to keep his mouth shut, but he dared to name the powerful Egyptian foreign minister. U.S. sources tell me that Badra has been thrown into one of Egypt's notorious prisons. The fear is that he'll be tortured until he recants his story. But I already have his story on film. Here's more of it.
You're saying that Kamal Hassan Ali, the foreign minister of Egypt today, and the defense minister then, personally lied to you about this contract?
He was lying to the American and to the Egyptian owner of the company, not me alone.
Apparently it isn't safe in Egypt to embarrass the foreign minister. He sent me a denial. From other sources, it was hinted that the authorities would go easier on Badra if I played up the denial. He called the charges malicious lies. He challenged, I'm quoting, any person or party to prove the charges. Well, I accept the challenge. I say to the Egyptian government, release Mossad Badra. The last thing he told my associate Dale Van Atta was this, I'm quoting, the American authorities must investigate this. Well, they're doing exactly that. So I urge the Egyptian government to let Badra come back to the United States and testify. Next week, I'll report on the possible spread of infectious diseases to your neighborhood. I'm Jack Anderson in Washington.
Jack Anderson Confidential is a Jack Barry and Dan Enright production in association with Able Communications.
I'm just I'm in a world of, like limbo, you know. I just have no up and down. There's no, you know, it's just a matter of time till I die. It's just the waiting. It's the hard part. You know, sometimes a guy is going to get killed. He's going to get the electric chair. He's going to be hung or gassed. He knows his date. Me, I don't know it. I don't know what tomorrow brings. We've talked about giving up to children. That's now that's even a thought that occurred to us, and that's for their sake more so.
From the West Coast to the East Coast, across the Atlantic to London and Frankfurt to Hawaii, fly World Airways to the world of your dreams. World, the airline for people who hate to waste money.